Hello friends, I am Dr. Awadhesh Kumar Dubey from Kamla Nehru Physical and Social Sciences Sultanpur. Students, this is the economics classes, and in this class we are discussing about the economic contributions of Ramesh and Datta. This is the second series of Ramesh and Datta's economic contributions. On the first series, we are discussing about the economic thought of the Ramesh and Datta. And now in this series, we are focusing on the Ramesh and Datta's economic opinion, what they think about the economic views, what they think about the economic plannings of British period, and what the impact of that period, that work for the on the Indian economy. Students, our previous lectures are focusing about the academic life, focusing about the administrative life, focusing about the earlier basic life of Ramesh and Datta, the introductions of the Ramesh and Datta. But in this lectures, we are mainly focused on the economic contribution of the Ramesh and Datta for their for as an administrator and as an economic laureate. So now start the lecture. If you are newly joined this group, so subscribe these channels and suggest it to other people for subscriptions. Students, now we continue the our topics, economic contributions of the Ramesh and Datta. So, students, here the topic is economic contribution of Ramesh and Datta. Students, Ramesh and Datta, as earlier lecture we have discussed that he was the economic excellence and he was the well-known academician. So, during this intensive research and analysis, he's shown that the British rules not only failed to improve the physical contributions of the economy, physical conditions of the Indian economy, because the policies of the Britishers are says that he was trying to improve the Indian economy, but according to Ramesh and Datta, he was totally failed to improve the conditions of the Indian economy, but also lead to deindustrialization of the Indian economy on that period. Ramesh and Datta was saying that before the British periods, before the British empire, before the British administration, there were so many industries, there were so many handicraft industries, there are so many handmade industries and regional industries was developed in Indian village, and the product of Indian villages are being exported worldwide. So many countries are be the market of the Indian product, but during the during the British Empire, during the British overruling, these industries was resumed, these industries were withdrawn. So the British rule was totally be failed, and due to their failureness, the industrialization was deindustrialized. As a result of the British economy policy, there was a sharp decline in the handicraft productions of India, and there was no increase in industrial productions to compensate. Because if the industries are faces the problems like administrative problems, like resource-wise problems, like management-wise problem, then this is the responsibility of the administrator to compensate that challenges, to compensate for that losses. But Britishers are not to be entrusted for the survival of the Indian handicraft industries, not to entrusted to grow the industrial economy, Indian economy, and they cannot be compensate for the loss of the Indian peoples, loss of the Indian economy. So this was the cause of the failureness of the Indian industries or the Indian rural area. Nor was any protections provided to Indian industries during this era. As a result, the Indian economy was forced to depend more on agriculture than even before, because the peoples who are unemployed by shutting down the handicraft industries or Indian domestic industries, they are facing the problem of survival. And on that period, agriculture was only one source of the survival of the peoples, only one source of the livelihood of the peoples. So the mobilizations of the huge amount of the peoples, or the peoples are belonging to the handicraft industries or other rural industries, mobilizing from industries to the rural area. And this was the cause of ruralizations of the Indian society, because the most of the populations are being transmitted or mobilized on this occupation. Professor Datta or RC Datta said that even the so-called constructive steps of the British colonies, like development of the uh, roadways, development of the railways, did not benefit India. Datta says that the rail transport introduced by the British led to the death of the traditional transport services, and train contribute to use the transport good manufactured in British factories. Britishers are saying that the railways are developed the transportation facilities of the Indian economy, but Datta says no, this is the fault. Due to development of the British railways, the huge amount of the colonial economy, huge amount of the colonial transportations, rural transportations was be ended, and the peoples are engaged on these occupations are being totally unemployed. And on other hand, Britishers are Britishers are consuming the Indian raw material as much as possible, and the motives for productions to uh, get the maximum raw from the Indian village and to develop it in the factories and sell into the Indian market for the maximum profit. This was the motive of the Britishers for the development of the railways. Not it is the development, not for the development of the Indian rural areas. Datta concluded that the Indian economy is not underdeveloped, but it is developed has been stunned by the Britishers' policy. Indian economy has potential to develop, because before the British rules, the Indian economy is the leading economy on the world. But due to the Britishers overrule, Britishers ruling, the Indian economy gone to the backward, and this is the cause of policies of the Britishers, by whom the Britishers are stunned the Indian economy. Britishers are dump the Indian economy. The histories writers by him defeat the prevailing Marxian notions in the sections of scholars according to which the roots of the British colonial is held to be progressive. On that period, the Marxian historical history writers are opposing the Datta. They say that the steps for the agriculture, for the railways development and the transport development, for the development of the India, and Britishers are taking so many preventive steps for the development of the Indian economy, but this was not the real situation. Apart from economic historian, Ramesh Datta was also a talented and skilled cultural historian, along with being the founder, president of the Bangiya Sahitya Parishad. He also did short poetry translations of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana into the English. This was the great academic initiatives of the R.C. Datta. Based on the evidence of the Sanskrit literature, Datta also composed the history of the ancient civilizations of the India, and this was their interest about the Indian ethics. Now, apart from highlighting the ill effect of the British economy policies, that the other measures contributions to the development of the economic thought was that he advocated for limiting the government interventions in the Indian economy. Datta was in the favor of good administration, but they say that good administrators are such administrators who are limited interfere in the domestic or the rural chaos. If the chaos is destructive, then the government have to intervene it. If until the chaos is ruralized, the government is not required to intervene in. He made his commendations in the early 20th century at a times when the other Indian economists were calling for reducing government interferences in the Indian economic life. And this was the theoretically be proved by the Ramesh Chandra Datta, R.C. Datta. Datta says that the government should avoid intervention that reduce private initiatives, but he prepared to intervene in special circumstances so as to avoid conflict of interest while avoiding temporary crisis. According to Datta, if there are a conflict on high level, circumstances where the administrative problems are being taken, where the administrative challenges are being taken, then the government have to intervene on them. Then the government have required to interfere on such circumstances, or some private profits are there of the government. Then the government have to intervene them. Without these interests, without these circumstances, if there are no so high circumstances, there are no tough circumstances, then the Britishers are or any administrators are not to be required to intervene. This is the practical knowledge of the RC Datta. Students, Datta's methods of accessing reality was also different from that of the times. Instead of taking one as the dominant factor and the other as the influence among the many causes of the reality, uh, both sides the Datta was keen observer, so their cause and their influences both are being more clarified. Datta's developed the concept of the interdependence of the economy and the political fact. One side they are great economists, and the other side he introduced a political keen fact for the administration. He believes that the everything in the system of the society is interdependent, interconnected, so no work should be done like disturbing the balance. If the interdependent things and interconnected things are be clear, are be systematic, then there are no disturbance of the balance, or there are no balance disturbance be made on the operation of the economy. But at the same time, that they also understood that the balance is not always the same. This no, they also this is that balance during the administrations are naturally be a tough situation. So for making the balance, the government have to take some preventive measures, but not it active measures. He keeps on changing. Therefore, the government should focus on the underlying dynamic of the immediate situations at the times of the interventions. Otherwise, the interventionist steps may result is the opposite. This was the observation of the R.C. Datta. Now, the student he published the publication of the R.C. Datta works on the economic begins in 1900. His first book was Famine and Land Assessment in India. This was commenting the economic administrations of British Empire, or we can say the British Spain. A study of famines in India, which was also appreciated by the Russian anarchist philosopher Prince Kropotkin. His work showed how much he was interested in the living conditions of the Indian farmers and how his economic thought focused on improving the conditions of the Indian farmers. They are totally be in the favor of the Indian agriculture farmers, because the R.C. Datta was observing the situations of the Indian farmers on the period of famine. They believe that the Indian farmers have the potential to grow the economy, but due to some circumstances, due to some avoiding the policies of the Britishers, they are facing so many problems. So the supports of the RC Datta was forever in the favor of the Indian farmers. Datta raised the questions as to why the peoples of India had to face 10 severe famines in a period of the 40 years from 1858 onwards. He asked that during this time, the rules was in the hands of the Empress instead of the East India Company. Now, in these circumstances, the East India Company was not overruling the India; it was overruling by the queens, and queens have a great experiences gap, great knowledge about the administration. So what the cause that when a good administrator of England was administrating the Indian economy, but India Indian situations was not to be overcome. During these years, he was commenting on the administration motives. Datta says that during these years, there was usually peace and there was only one war. The government had trained administrators who had sufficient experiences in Indian conditions, but why should they fail? The lands was fertile on their situation, the farmers were enterprising and economical. Then why the Indian economy was suffering from this crisis? Datta was not ready to accept that the famines was caused by the rapid increasing in the populations or that the farmers of the Indian was careless and integrates. He also did not accept that the farmers being trapped in the clutch of the moneylender could be the cause of famines. Datta shows in his study that the rate of the population growth in India was not only allows lower than the England. On the situation, the Britishers are saying that due to increasing the overpopulation in India, the unemployment and the poverty was initiated. So by the census, the expressed that the population growth of the Britain was more rapid than the Indian economy. So why not the England are facing the problems of unemployment or underemployment? Why should only it in India? And further, the students, but in the 10 year prior of his study, the growth in the population of the country has stopped. They say that the population growth of the Indian economy was not to be grow. It is just as a stop growth or stagnant growth. So why should the development of the Indian economy was not to be in its increases? It was the questions made by the RC Datta. According to the Datta, there was no more hardworking and the less costly farmers anywhere in the world than the India. Indian farmers are more hard worker, and the cost of the Indian farmers are also bit lower than the other area of the world. So why should the Indian farmers are facing the problems? Referring to the reports to the commissions that inquiries into the cause of the famines, he said that due to strict collections of the government revenue, the farmers have to depend on the money lender. The government are not to be taking any incentive, not to be taking any remedies for the Indian farmers for money supports, for other financial supports, and other moral support. So this is what the money the farmers are barred to take the borrow, take the loans from the money lenders who charge huge amount of the interest, showing a mirror to the British government that demonstrate that despite the famines, there was no year when the all crops has been destroyed by the famines. Food grains was always full in the government godowns. If the crop in one provinces is bad, then the other provinces the crop is good or more than the previous year. So famine has expanded. Farming has been expanded during this period. It has also become intensive. The yield has also increases as compared to earlier year, the prices of the agriculture products have also increased. But even after this, the condition of the farmers has deteriorating continuously. That the blame for this to the British policies for this blames for this to the British. In 1902, the first volume of the Datta's great treatise, The Economic History of the British India, was published. It is called the best book written by the British, written on the British. In this, the economical history from the establishment of the British power in 1757 to the implementations of the emperor rules was presented. It continued contained an analytical descriptions of the policies related to farmers and land settlement policies related to trades and factories productions, as well as the policy related to the financial and administrations adopted under the East India Company. British criticized of critics of the books are praise its objectives and depth. In 1904, the second volume of this great books was published by R.C. Datta. Students, he claimed on the basis of authentic fact that the selfish policy adopted in the earlier era of the British rules was responsible for the decline of the Indian industries. They blaming to the government, to British government, for all faults of the Indian economy. That while highlighting the cause of poverty in India, proved that due to the policy of the British, indigenous industries and handicraft had to be destroyed. Lakhs of the peoples become unemployed, due to which they were left with no other options other than the agriculture for their livelihood. In this way, the numbers of the people living on the agriculture has increased to a great extent, and standards of the living of the all farmers are being fallen. Along with this, the British kept spending huge money to rule India, which did not benefit to the country. The fiscal policy and the land revenue system was designed in such a way that only the surviving resources were left with the farmers. Datta also had a prescriptions to cure these problems. He recommended that exercise duty should be removed from the Indian mills industries. Farmers should be freed from all tax exempted of the soft rent of the low rates. Military and the royal expenses in England should not be collected from the Indian, and the military is not too much required for the Indian administrations. Expenses should be reduced by the British government, and by adopting these moves, the losses of the Indian economy will be declined. This was the observation. This was the suggestions is made by the RC Datta students. Students, as soon as the Datta made these suggestions for the administration of the India of the Britishers, the British government and its supporters started criticism or criticizing him all round. All we know that there on the then period there are two kinds of the writers. First, the Marxian writers, and second is the nationalist writer. So R.C. Datta was belonging for the from the group of nationalist writers, and the English writers was in the favor of the Britishers, and they were called as a Marxian writer. So the Marxian writers was opposing the R.C. Datta, and attempts were made to disprove his fact and analysis. It should be noted that Datta was a senior officer of the Indian Civil Services and was bound by the responsibility of the serving the British rules, but strictly to his points, he argued with his opponent and consult, consulting requested the government to change policy to improve the Indian economic conditions, and it make the we can say it make the um, a mirror in front of the British government for blaming for all excuses for the bad situation of the Indian economy. Students, Ramesh and Datta's unique talent was not limited to administrative works only, but he was also a original writer and historian. At the beginning of his writing, he wrote in English, but later under the influences of the Bankim Chand Chattopadhyay, also composed in Bengali, Economic History of Indian, published in 2 volumes by the R.C. Datta. Most outstanding written works proved to be its source materials, mainly government reports and parliamentary papers. Uh, in this way, Datta did his writing basically on the basis of the articles uh, and government figures of the British officers. Nevertheless, his this was the first successful attempt to write the economy of the British era. Before this, no one had written the history of the British economy, nor was there any attempt to know as the historical cause of the Indian poverty. Written between the 1901 to 1902, uh, in these books, an attempt was made to touch almost all aspects of the economy of the colonial India: agriculture, industry, commerce. Nevertheless, the main focus of Datta's study was the British land revenue policy. In the last decade of the 19th century, frequently serves famines made the questions of the poverty, hungers, and production's importance by the R.C. Datta. Datta recognized that the land revenue policies, which include high rate of the land revenue, have led to the deteriorations of the agriculture estates as well as the main cause of the Indian poverty. Students, due to the high rate, farmers were constantly bringing forces to sow no food cash crops in place of cereal. Datta argued that since a large part of the Indian populations independent on agriculture, the continuous decline in agricultural conditions from year to year could lead to there is a shortage of the food grains. He also cited the declines in the productions of food grain and the main reasons for the famines. Apart from the colonial lands revenue policies, R.C. Datta also described the declining of the Indian handicraft industries as a consequences of the British policy. Studying the historical process of decline, he said that for centuries, Indians industrial productions, handicraft productions had a large market in Asia and Europe, and their products were sent to many countries. Not only this, but thousands of the Indian also got employment in springing, making, and other handicraft. That the claim that after the establishment of the British rule, Indian gradually lost not only in the foreign market but also the internal market of the country, because the British products are being dumped in the Indian market. R.C. Datta told that that in the order to make the Indian economy a slab of the British industries, India is being developed as a producer of the raw materials and as a market of the British industries. Thus, Datta linked the decline of the traditional Indian handicraft to British economic policy. This was the comment given by the R.C. Datta. The nationalist leaders made these economic analyses the main took of the nationalistic propaganda, not only the earlier nationalistic, but Mahatma Gandhi also made the decline of the Indian handicraft and exploitations of the wealth as the main medium of the propagations of nationalism or national movement in India. Had it not been for these studies, Perhaps the strategy of the Swadeshi and boycott the foreign would not have been born. Mahatma Gandhi converted the national movement into a mass movement by making the boycott of foreign cloth and important issues. The importance of these early economic studies cannot be overestimated as they introduce a traditions of economic historiography in India. Over time, the Indian historians, mainly Marxian historians, have produce excellent historiography of on various aspects of the colonial economy, but Datta was criticizing them. Datta was declining all their fact, destroying all their fact by the real fact was they made was they feel during their administration and during their by their work. So thank you, students. Was the all initiative and works given by the RC Datta. So in this lecture series, we complete the work or attempt made by the RC Datta for the development of the Indian economy, for the development of the Indian policy system. Thanks you a lot, students, for this lecture, for this work. I hope all of you are satisfied with the work of RC Datta. Now, on the other lecture, our next lecture, we are discussing on the new about the new scholar that was the Bhimrao Ambedkar. Bhimrao Ambedkar was known as the legislator in Indian history, but there's also we have economic contributions. So on the next lecture, students, we are studying about the economic work of the Bhimrao Ambedkar, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. Enjoy that lecture. So for enjoying it, please subscribe this channel and suggest to other people